So it wasn't strictly true to say that I was the only person doing fusion music. This isn't true. I don't want to go any more than you want to misrepresent the subject. I don't want to be misrepresented, and I frequently have been described as a junkie and so on. Well, I have been. I mean, it was so long ago.
That interests.
Have any of these individuals who said that ever fought me? So
they say a lot of people say a lot of themselves.
I know. That's all I have to say.
No, I'm less interested in sort of people passing judgment. That's not what interests me. The thing that does fascinate me is the way this instrument, the guitar, has done and has meant different things to different people, and they've done different things with it.
I had a sort of itch to do as much as I could with the instrument before joining anybody else. And while joining Alexis's band and Mayall's band was very exciting. The group feeling was there. I felt that the singularity wasn't what I was anxious to prove. Something in me may have been trying to prove it. And I wasn't only conceit that led me to play alone for all these years. It's simply that when I have a jam with Gordon Kilcher, I know what I'm doing. You know, I know what I'm going to play next. If he's going to change key, I'm sure I know the chords. But I mean, the idea of going it alone was just, can I find out everything about the guitar by myself? Segovia's doing it, and he's doing it on a German guitar. He won't play a note of flamenco. There are reasons for all these things. I wanted to know what all the reasons were for myself. No, I wanted to find out everything I could about strings, playing string instruments, before I played with a band again. And the other thing was, frankly, in the 60s, financially, the incentive was there. People had more money to spend. They say, you know, if you want to know what money is, try and borrow some. It's pretty simple. If I come round to your house, you'll make me a cup of tea. But if you're not in the mood and I'm a tramp in the street, you wouldn't give me that price of that cup of tea. If you weren't in the mood, you wanted to look the other way at something else. Well, you know that feeling you can't look, you know? Everyone gets it. It's not peculiar to any individual. But I've travelled widely in Arab countries, in India, and to some extent not widely in India. I wouldn't say no one travels widely in India. Usually they don't come back for 20 years like Howard Hughes. I mean, either you do a Howard Hughes, or you go and make the world your oyster. As a socialist observed the other day, it was on a post-judgmental health consortium I was attending. I've been to a full score of those the last few years. He said it's not a question of when we will start giving to the third world, it's now a question of when we'll stop taking from the third world.
So
we got up to, God, we were all over the place.
That's all right.
You remember where we were, I expect you.
I do. We've just gone past. We're just past this.
So I did a lot of television. '64 was a big year for me. Troubadour was very important, and that's been was going to the since the mid-50s, run by Mike Van Bloemen, the originator of the expression "Let's get this road on the show."
So, when did you start playing the Troubadour? Was this when you started? It was always present with it.
Ever since the Ken Russell, I did my very first public appearance at the Troubadour.
So the Troubadour was...
65, 66 went quite well. 65, are we on? We were on.
Yes.
65, Cecil Sharp House concert with Shirley Collins. We're quoting Hit the Road Jack in the middle of Angi, because it's the same chord sequence. And Charlie Bird, who I cited as not cited as relationship. I hadn't heard Charlie Bird in those days, and my God, I wish I had. I wish I'd been playing bossa nova years before I did. Of course. And then, of course, by the time, 10 years later, you want to know it, but a young man who was a boy when I started playing, only 6 years old, John Williams. He said, old Mr. Skinner said to me when I bought my first guitar, he said, "You're going to be hearing a lot of this fellow, John Williams." He said, "You wait, just you wait." And quite how right he was. Folk blues and beyond, it was all going to my head. I hadn't been inside a church unless it was to admire the stained glass, but I don't think I said a prayer in those days. Honestly, I was too busy. The exotica of the world appealed to me. It wasn't. It was more. I was so bewitched by beauty. I mean, like the difference between Hesse and Thomas Mann. A friend of mine says, "Don't forget, Thomas Mann is the one with the brain." I mean, I didn't really agree with that. But Herman Hesse's sense of beauty was remarkable. I always reason that beauty is never mistaken. That beautiful things are in themselves intelligent. That they have integrity and completeness. Tiger, running right.
Keats said, beauty is truth and truth is beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know.
No, that is indeed something, yes. I wish I'd read that.
I wish I'd written it.
Don't worry, you will. So 65 went off well. I was in good shape, I mean, professionally. I did have a habit, but it wasn't a very big one. So if you ever hear anybody mentioning heroin and me in the same sentence, remember heroin has an E on the end, and my mother was a very remarkable woman. Yes, I never had a big habit. It's important to tell you that while I get the drug thing out of the way. I never had a big habit. I never got blood poisoning or anything like that. I got confused. They all get confused. But later on I was to make it up by, doing the judo 300 press-ups a day and ruining the speed of my finger work by doing too many press-ups. Yes, and unfortunately they're very bad for guitarists. They never do press-ups. I would think I was losing my grip here. I joined the Musicians' Union, became a member of the Performing Arts Society. Scotland, again. I think Stefan took that picture, or perhaps it was one of the Scots guys. He should have got a credit there, should have a little credit. Now, one thing I apologise for is that not all my sidemen on my records are credited. That was because of my complete and utter self-absorption. It seems a little unfair, though, not to have included people like Danny Thompson and John Heisman I mentioned, I seem to remember. Johnny Spooner played, and I should have had them made it part of the deal that they were credited. I was still playing blues then. It wasn't until Kent that I really, when I met you, that I actually started delving into why can't I read music. Now, I'd been turned down for a visa because of my stay in a couple of hospitals, which for some reason is a stigma. To some people it is anyway, to others it isn't. It depends what kind of friendships you form in such places and whether they affect your behaviour when you get out. But I had nothing to do with any of these junkie people for a good 3 years while I was in Kent, and so I learnt to read music, and somehow it's like an arrow that won't come out. It's stayed in me.
Yes, by that time, by the time I met you, which was later on, I was 72, I think. I mean, you'd had a big, you discovered Irish music.
That's right. I'd been turned down for the visa.
Yeah.
B, I heard the Chieftains. C, I thought, emigration's not for me, not yet.
Yeah.
Hamish Himmelach, yes, he was playing blues, and he was playing a lot of Gary Davis material, I seem to remember. He once drove me all over Scotland on a tour. I hope I gave him some petrol money. But we had some great fun, particularly at the Springfield Hotel, I remember, between Edinburgh and Glasgow. Yeah, he was one of the few Scots players that played fingerpicks like Baron McGee, although I imagine that, independently of that, Ruff was probably doing the same thing. Les Bridger, I remember him vaguely.
He was the guy
what he looks like.
He was the guy who owned Burt Jansch's guitar.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, I used to have a guitar built or borrowed and used.
No, that's torn out. I didn't tear that one out.
Very
Dave
nice
Van
song.
Rock, I heard him at the Troubadour. There you are, you see. Just goes to show you that. Richard Freen, I had supper with Freen. Never met Mimi, but Dick Freen I did know. Sorry, we're talking about the 60s, aren't we? This is 72, this was written.
What other people would have been on there when you were playing? Are there any sort of
Donovan,
events
Cat Stevens, apparently all these people came there. Cat Stevens, Roy Harper, Sandy Daniel as well. I had a bit of a pash for Sandy, you know the way you do, you know. Forget your conscience sort of thing.
Did you ever work with Sandy?
No, we did actually do. She moved through the fair one night on because I recorded it with Shirley years before, and Sandy wanted to do it her way, and then I heard her sing Bags of the Nile. I thought it was easy, beautiful. And the other time I think I remember particularly well, apart from actually playing with the legendary Sonny Boy Williamson on television, was playing a gig with Champion Jack Dupree. I played with him 2 or 3 times on the same bill. Brentwood, I think it was, or Brentford, I can't remember. The time Sandy Ball came down to the Cousins was a great night to me. And also when Red Sullivan was into the voice, because he had a throat operation some time ago, but he was always a great blues shouter. He introduced me to many a good blues singer. I mean, all I'd heard of was Joe Williams. He introduced me to Cleanhead Vince, Eddie Cleanhead Vinson, and he also introduced me to John Mayall and Red Sullivan. Both were great Lenny Bruce fanatics. You know, they were very interested in American humour. I got some stuff to make a hair stand and then you have to take it with you because I'm sure you'll return a second. Remind me, won't you?
Yes, I will.
John Martin was acoustic then, as was Roy Harper. I once gave Roy a lesson actually, only once, but well, it's like pea in the pod. I suppose some people are born to be larger than life, and Roy's one of them. You know, he's somehow well adjusted, and he's very. I don't know. I have a cynical streak. I can't do anything about it. I have to ask a Buddhist about that.
Al Stewart himself, of course.
Al Stewart. I remember the night Al Stewart crashed a car with me in it. And I thought, my God, I hope it wasn't anything to do with his eyesight. It wasn't me, was it? It wasn't me blinking at that blonde and thinking, oh, wasn't that a fabulous traffic light we just went through? I wonder what G7... And meanwhile, people think about traffic lights and brakes and gears and, you know, MOT. And I was sitting in the front seat. It wasn't a serious accident. It was a nice little motor, a Studebaker or something, 2 4-seater. I've been in a few crashes, actually. I got my first guitar in '56, which was bought for me by a friend. And for 3 years, instead of doing my homework, you know, advanced French and Latin and all these things, Chaucer, I used to walk with Tony Bicklev, who was another guitar player, 3 miles from West 11 to the Jar and Kimball in Charing Cross. We always walked because we hadn't got any money, so we got there, played till 3 in the morning, and then would walk home, sometimes at dawn after visiting various night spots. And so that's where Long John Baldry and I met we used to play. He used to do a very good version of John Henry, and Martin Windsor and Red Sullivan were running at this coffee bar.
So when that was the first time you came down to London, or you were living in London at that time?
Yes, I was already living in London with my mother and my 2 sisters and my brother, all who were younger. And so when I remember in '58, I heard Broonzy. I came in the door with my satchel. I remember it was an afternoon like today, sunny, and I came in through the door, and I heard what would have been the G string on Broonzy's guitar being slowly tuned up and down because he was doing Joe Turner blues. I thought, what is that? And then I thought I simply must drop everything and capture that sound. And so I put steel strings on my nylon strung guitar. Well, everyone knows what happens to that after a few months. And it was covered in cellophane and Scotch tape and puff too, and even nails driven in to keep the bridge on. Because I didn't know anything about that. It was a £10 guitar. And it started with a £10 guitar, which is you could probably get a very good one for about 30 or 50 there in those days. And so between 56 and 58, 59, 58 one evening found me at a party thrown for Jack Elliott, who was wearing a white shirt, and Alexis Korner, who was wearing a black shirt. He was always radical, Alexis, in every direction. Jack said that the shirt that he was wearing had been given to him by one of the Platters, and that's why he was wearing it. And well, someone introduced me to Alexis, and then when Alexis found out I could play like Broonzy, because I could, suggested that I take over the Rhythm and Blues Barrel House session. I forget the pub's name actually. It's the end of the road near the 2i where the 2i's used to be, and Tommy Steele used to play there, of course. Singing the Blues was one of my favourite records at the time. And all Lonnie Donegan's records. I was driving out of my tree. I couldn't do my homework, thinking about how to get the right chords to Rock Island Line or Bring Little Lord Silver.
You were still at school at this time?
Yes, I was. Yes, I was at Wandsworth. Frank Bruno went there. I don't want to read anything into that. I wouldn't if I were you. After a couple of years, 2 or 3 years of intense practice, I used to practice 6-8 hours a day. I started off with Malagueña, and then Mystery Train. That was where my mother used to slam her door and say, for God's sake, stop playing that. After having done a month or two of Saint-Tropez in Paris, the Latin Quarter, living in the Latin Quarter, went straight from that into radio and television here, so as green as it's possible to be, really, from professionally. I didn't know the names of the chords I was playing, I didn't know the relationship of the strings. I could tune up, and I just had a very good memory for tunes.
I was just wondering, if I just take you back a little bit, to think about what was motivating you. Was it just the sound that you'd heard from the Broonzy sound and the other influences?
Very much Broonzy, and I've omitted to mention a very important influence in those days. It was Brownie McGee. It was undoubtedly like Auto Mechanic Blues. It's one I remember, Wholesale and Retail. I'm a wholesaling daddy, but I retail on the side. There were numerous tracks by Brownie McGee that I would still say was the greatest blues ever played by Broonzy. I met Wiz Jones around that time. Wiz Jones was on the scene.
It's the early 60s, late
this would be end of the 50s, early 60s. Wiz Jones was living in Barnet somewhere, in a sort of commune. This is about the time of the race riots in Notting Hill. I got beaten up one night walking home. I said, "Where were you last night?" Crash. Don't do a thing, because only one man attacked me. It was very ironical considering my blood group. There were 5 of them sitting across the road waiting for me to fight back, and I wouldn't have had a chance. Oddly enough, didn't touch the guitar, so
That's a relief.
That was that. After the festival, I talked myself into a job at the place in Edinburgh.
Oh, on Victoria Street.
Paul and Brown Wardman.
So you're already travelling up backwards and forwards at that stage? Or travelling up to
Yes,
Scotland?
I went up there 12 times in a row, I think 11 or 12 times in a row. And then, of course, Rory and his brother Alex McEwen, both last night are with us. ran were appointed the producers of the Hullabaloo show. It was either called Hullabaloo or it was called My Kind of Folk. I don't know, there were two series, I don't remember. But in those days I felt I was more of a blues player than anything, so I thought, largely due to Alexis's influence, who turned me on to Snooks Eakins playing, for example, who was, and I had Jack Elliott had played me, Rambling Jack Elliott had played me Ray Charles saying "Come Back Baby." They were a terrific Come Back Baby. I mean that late 50s with the big band, Ray Charles and the big band, was really wonderful noise.
We were talking about Ray Charles and the big band.
Oh yes, Ray Charles. Well, his version of Come Back Baby was very. Bert Jansch was very fond of that, and he used to do it a lot. I stopped doing it. I did it when I was influenced by Brownie McGee, and then I stopped doing it because it was curious. I was living at home, trying not to. It was the usual Oedipus ring mum kind of situation. I broke the bonds and didn't go home for a year. Went to jet back and forth to Paris and boat mostly. And so for many years I played in folk clubs. Although for the first couple of years in Britain, apart from my travelling, I used to try and, if someone was appearing somewhere, I used to just spruce myself up and go down there and see if I could knock spots off what they were going to do before they did it. I applied myself assiduously to this low approach for a couple of years, and it reaped a benefit in the form of 3, 4, 5 gigs a week for a couple of years. I can't remember exactly. I had some problems then. I kept moving house, and so people wouldn't have my phone number.
It's interesting you mentioned that you didn't find the call to go west.
No.
I find it interesting.
Probably because I felt there was a great fuss on about the brain drain. All our best doctors were going to the States, and I felt it was a cop-out somehow. That was one reason. The other reason was most of my family was still here. Reason number 3 was my brother and both my sisters had the most hair-raising adventures in the States, all of which I was to duplicate with a bottle of LSD-25 on a trip across the Mediterranean to Turkey with 3 Americans from Ibiza in '66. But that's jumping ahead, sorry.
But I just thought as a general point it was interesting, having obviously listened so closely to a lot of Black American music.
Yes.
There wasn't a sort of musical desire to go there and find out more at close quarters.
Well, from my days at the library, I had heard Mwenda Jimbosco Yamba Yeke, so I was very much interested in the blues, and somehow this obscured for a long time the other things to realise about European music, which I've been researching since. And then you get this right up here, for example, this one in 62 at 21, Seeks Jazz Music in India. Well, I wasn't to realise that until 1978, you see, when I had children growing up and so on. But I went to Morocco and Tunisia. I spent a long time in Morocco, really. Well, Wiz Jones was doing a lot of Jack Elliott material. I restricted my use of the plectrum to busking. I thought, now if I'm going to play the way Oliver Hunt played to me, that marvellous D minor suite, ever going to play anything that has taste, and I thought the blues had taste. I didn't realise it was the devil's music until a phrase I never heard. I stopped going to church entirely for several years, which was probably the reason for my narcoleptic adventures. But I went to, I think it was Morocco, I went in, it must have been 61 or 62, And I lived with Wally Shorts, who's a flute player, flautist, who's now working in Amsterdam with a salsa band. In the Casbah, Casbah simply means old town, the Medina, the old town, where everyone spoke Arabic, French, English if you wanted to change in black market dollars. It's the carpet street. You'd go down from the Grand Soccer to the Petit Soccer, and Soccer Chico and Soccer Grande, as they would refer to. All the street names had 3 names. So I spent a couple of months completely shut in 4 walls, having the occasional spliff, but not often. That's why I devised the Dagdag tuning, which independently of me and having nothing to do with me at all, other people are devolved elsewhere. For example, the use of the open subdominant is found on sarod and sitar, and was completely independent of me. It had been developed in other parts of the world, and other people mentioned it, the tuning, and said they didn't know where it came from, and that was this way it's full of flattery. Where I think most entertainers are prone to flattery. It's must be very few people who aren't. Anyway, the detuning.
So you experimented with
Tangiers, yes.
When you were there.
That's right. And then one of the tunes I was working on was one I'd played often in Drumdryan Street in Toll Cross in Edinburgh, the Sindhi Bhairavi by Ali Akbar Khan. And I really wanted to learn to play this the most magnificent of all the ragas possibly, depending on your inclination. It's the only one in which you can play all the notes of the scale, although it has a distinctly minor feel. You can play major notes in it and so on, whereas most of the other ragas are restricted to pentatonic modes, which are different in ascent and descent.
When you returned to London armed with the sort of new tunings and the things you found, how did you reapproach what you had left?
I remember it acutely coming back up to Victoria Station and freezing cold with no gloves, suitcase and guitar and what was on the hit parade, or someone lent me a record with the freewheeling Bob Dylan, and I thought, don't think twice, said it all, and Corinna, which I loved very much. I loved the way he sang in those days, slightly with a bit of a cold or something, like a veil over his face, so to speak. Later on, unfortunately, I was so much into my own trip, as the expression has in the 60s, that I didn't really listen to Dylan's lyrics. I do owe him that, to sit down and stand on my head if necessary and actually listen to all the words. Lots of people who were in the Flower Power time with me actually did listen to they tripped and they listened to Dylan. I didn't do my tripping then. I took one trip at Easter in '61 after I'd read Huxley, but then I'd also seen in the library, I'd seen books on what happened in Nazi Germany, so I was an adult, reasonably speaking, and having read Huxley, I was perhaps better equipped than anybody else to. I said, like when we took the acid, I remember saying, right, we must all say a prayer now, and I don't think it doesn't matter now. So in half an hour it's going to matter when you start.
The best approach I've ever.
So then I played a Nick's Diner in Ifield Road for Nick and Serafina for 2 years, 2.5 years I think. So before going to, where we made The Servant as well, before going to Tangiers. So
this is right, you did that.
That's right, I played blues there and I was approached for a contract there. I made my first album, the Pie album, The Guitar Player. There were all sorts of famous people came in. Ted Dexter, Robert Ryan, Peter Sellers, Hattie James, John Mazurier, Nandi and Jonathan Routh from Candy Camera. All sorts of people came in from in professional fields. It was one of the night spots you'd hit in the same way as these days perhaps people will go to Quaglino's or Borscht and Shears or something like that.
So the record you did with Alexis, the 3/4 Angi, that was done before you went to Tangiers or when you came back?
That was done immediately I came back. I remember that distinctly because meeting Bill Leader, I had rather strange vibes then, I remember. Alexis introduced me to Leader and we just made the record straight away. And
you enjoyed working
Alexis
with
was always a good judge.
You enjoyed working with Alexis?
Yes, a very stimulating man, but he'd bite your head off if you stuck your tongue out. Clean off at the waist. Yes.
So were the recording possibilities were sort of opening up at that time?
They were, because either the Pie record came before this Topic 70 record. Did it? Yes, because I can't remember that. And then, of course, they were just 5 minutes walk away, Topic records.
So Angi would have been written around this time as well?
Yeah, Angi was composed while I was under the influence of some... with the influence, shall we say, of some French pills. I'm not going to describe them, it's nothing to do with you.
But you'd like to know where
I
we
was
get
sitting
some.
alone opposite in Monton. We were all in Monton. We'd arranged to meet Alex Campbell there because Pete Watson was there, Trosting, or Deaf Orange Watson was there as well. We got arrested for being 3 or 4 people on a Lambretta. So we wound up in jail. And it was very amusing actually because Alex Campbell turned up trying to look respectable as possible for a man who's been drinking and playing in folk clubs and had 2 bad bouts of tuberculosis in his life. He came and got us out of jail. I remember he had a de Maupassant novel or something carefully, respectably under his arm. Meanwhile, he was wearing a denim suit. He was one of us, but he was the oldest of us. He got us out of jail anyway. So I was owed him that. So
you wrote Angi in France?
Yes, in France, on the border of France and Italy, actually. Let me see what else I want to say about that. Nothing.